Mic check. 1 2 1 2. Mic check. Mic check. One two. Mic check. Hey Audrey, how you doing? Hey, by the way, Audrey, I email the guy. Um, but I'll reach out to you because I think I got an idea about what you need to do because I saw something on his website. So I'll be reaching out to you this week. But I did email him though. Trying to give a second for folks to get notified since I haven't been on here in a little while. So I know it's unexpected, but I'm gonna give it a couple minutes, see if we at least get 10 people in here, then we'll start rolling because the way we do it. Oh yeah. Yeah. So we'll talk about it Wednesday, Audrey. Yeah, I don't have my thing in front of me, but yeah, yeah, I'll be there Wednesday. I just washed my hair, so dripping, dripping water on my shirt. Okay, so I know it's late to be having a conversation about the summer solstice here on the last day, but there's a lot still to discuss about the energy. And let's see, right now, where is the let me check something. Let me see where the sun is right now. Oh yeah. So the sun is and Jupiter are forming a Kazemi right now. Okay, as we speak. So I hope all is well with everybody out there in cyber world. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. We never would have imagined, many of us, that we would be witnessing some of the things we're witnessing right now, that we would have seen them in our lifetimes. But what I would try to share this evening will be an attempt to provide a different perspective. And we're going to go kind of left field. But I think that's per usual for us. So we're going to get going. Let's get going. So, unless you've been under a rock, you've heard about some of the recent developments the U.S. has. Uh, First, it was Iran and Israel. Then the U.S. jumps in and says, you can't do that to Israel. Those poor Israelis. We're going to come and defend them. I'll be the one who will fight for your honor. Yeah. So this is, I'm trying to think where all I want to go with this. Let's jump right to this right here. I've been talking about the summer solstice. I've been talking about Jupiter's ingress into Cancer, and I've been talking about the potential positivity surrounding those. And I find it interesting that at this moment, after all of the heavy energy that we've endured from um, September up through the spring of this year, with Mars transit through Cancer. Then when it moved, then those times when it was in Leo, it was opposing Pluto. So it was either in Cancer in its fall, or it was in Leo opposing Pluto. We've been dealing with that back and forth um, since September of last year. And here we finally get a little bit of reprieve because Jupiter has come behind that um, difficult Mars and brings a little bit of grace and mercy. And then now the world is like it's topsy turvy, and people are arguing online. Some people are scared. All types of messages are being put out from all these different voices, and they all seem to just know what's going on and here's what's really happening. And then you have people arguing, saying, well, this is what you voted for. And then the other ones are saying, well, no, the problem was from the other administration. And then, uh, I mean, it's all types of, what's something else I heard? I heard somebody else say that, oh, now they got sleeper cells and you don't know where. And so this is what happens with social media. The word media means magic. So social media is social magic. And the people who get their information from just sound bites and memes and podcasts and other people pontificating, they get it and it sounds like something that resonates with where they stand. And then the people go run to social media or social magic, and then they scream it from the mountaintop. This is what's going on. And that, now, so here's Jamal, the weirdo, who always seems to see things differently from the majority of other people. Not because I'm trying to be a old curmudgeon or think I'm special. It's just I see things differently. And I'm always wondering, like my homeboy say, what's the overlay for the underlay? So I went and I'm about to take you all around Robin Hood's barnyard and bring you back up to the current events. I've been doing some probing and I've been inquisitive about when did ADHD start? And I'm going to tell you how this began. They had this thing in California with the um some Mexicans. It was a protest or something. I think there was some type of violence, and it happened on the anniversary of the Chino riots in 1943. So another creator wanted me to look into it and see, okay, what do you lovely soul empress, she wanted me to look into it and see, well, what do you think about this from an astrological standpoint? Well, my mind was already thinking, okay, um, I was looking back at 1943. I already thought about that and the fact that Uranus made its ingress into Gemini in 43, I think. But then my mind started going somewhere completely different. I started thinking about the nervous system because Gemini and Uranus, we have to think about the effect on the nervous system and the wiring. Will we be able to receive the updated software, the software update? Will our hardware be able to receive it? I think of part of my mind thinks of Uranus in Gemini as potential to fry the motherboard. And so my mind jumped from what she was asked me about, and I jumped over to something else. And then it led me into thinking about, I wonder if that's when ADHD kicked off. And I started going down a rabbit hole on ADHD. Okay. And it took me I found articles. Something said 1845, something else said 1798. And this is why you got to be careful not to run with things when you first come across them. Um, and then I found something really intriguing. And it was a little short article called Narrative Matters. When does the history of ADHD not begin? And this guy, who's a historian in the UK, he says that all these potential dates as the origin of ADHD, as in the capacity that we use it today, whether it's 1902, 1890, 1850, 40s or 50s, or late 1700s, that these are all kind of false starts. And he says, if we want to look to the official beginning of ADHD, he said you got to go to 1957. I'm going to read a little bit of this. Prior to 1957, it is very difficult to find any instances of children in the medical literature present the symptoms of ADHD. Peace, Natalia. Peace, Ryan. And it says, then in 1957, an article describing hyperkinetic impulse disorder changes everything. In it, we finally get children who resemble those diagnosed with ADHD today. The children have the symptoms that we would recognize: hyperactivity, inattention, and impulsivity. And crucially, the authors stress that such children are very common to be found in every classroom. Moreover, the state that these symptoms are to some extent normally found in the course of development of children. Now, listen, he says the other key development in 1957 was the Soviet Union's launch of the Sputnik satellites. Sputnik threw the U.S. Political, scientific, and educational establishment into a panic, prompting calls for abrupt changes in U.S. education. In order to outcompete the Soviets in the brain race, students had to stay in school for longer and achieve higher standards. It was no longer acceptable for teenagers to leave high school for unskilled jobs, which were disappearing anyway. As a result, the progressive education approach that was dominated that had dominated since the 1930s, which took a child-centered learning by doing approach, was replaced by a return to subject-centered learning focused on core subjects. Such changes were reinforced by the $1 billion National Education Defense Act of 1958. And this is where the rubber starts to hit the road. Because this guy has laid down some heavy initial framework that, and so we got to go back and think. That's why, you look at history horizontally. And this is why astrology is so powerful, because it allows you to look in parallel. As you look at historical events, you're able to look at astrological configurations. Now let's just go back in time. What is going on in the US predominantly, but let's think globally first. Globally, this is coming off of the West's victory in World War II. And when I say the West, I'm meaning Britain, US, and, well, we're not going to say the West because really Russia was part of this. US, Russia, Britain, right? And they defeat Italy, Japan, Germany. Now, what's going on now is after World War II is done, this is the explosion of the American dream form of capitalism in the US. This is when the television really becomes in vogue. This is when advertising goes to a new level. So you got to think, what is advertising? It is psychological manipulation. All right? That's key. But also, what's happening is after Germany is subdued and Japan is blown to smithereens, and Italy is, you know, cannon fodder, on paper. Now the focus turns to Russia. And then there's a senator named Joseph McCarthy who in the early 50s would really push peace sage. Joseph McCarthy would really push this whole thing of this this red scare and this paranoia about there being commies within the US who were conspiring to overturn democracy and to invade the US with communism. Now, if you think now, this whole thing still plays out to this day. This whole thing about democracy and when Clinton ran against Trump, Trump used the Russians, and that whole uh, scheme and means of mental manipulation has been played. That whole game plan has been used over and over and over since the 50s. There's also in the early 50s, this is when Jack Parsons dies, I think in 52. Now, Jack Parsons is part of the whole OTO and Crawley and sex magic, and he was in big into rocket propulsion. Rockets also would line up symbolically with missiles. Rockets and missiles symbolically would represent the phallus. Jack Parsons was heavy into sex magic, along with Crawley and that whole group. So you gotta think about, I'm just giving you all these things so you can just see the climate around this time, because a lot of times we think within a box, we think within a tunnel, and you have to think nuanced if you want to have even an idea of how to measure what you see in front of you. Okay, you can't think in a you know in a straight line. And there's so many other pieces to this, but I gotta kind of do the Reader's Digest version. I'm sure all of y'all will have things that'll be triggered as I'm talking. And okay, so let me get back. So this is the 50s, right? So we got the whole Red Scare. We're worried about the commies. that seed is being planted into the consciousness. And then when the Russians launch Sputnik, it then creates this paranoia, it increases, and now we need to make sure that we can catch up, or we as in the US, let's differentiate. The US can keep pace with the Russians, Soviet Union. So they, as this guy says in the article, this is when this change comes in public education. And this change had already been there. In other words, it's not like this was just completely new, because if we really go back and do the research, education in the US is based on communist East Prussia. That's the model for the origin of public education. Horace Mann and other philanthropists, Benjamin Rush and others. This was based on animal husbandry and communist East Prussia. In other words, how to control a young mind, how to control a soul, and to have it, to shape it so that it will operate as a cog in the wheel. So that's what's the great irony here. Capitalism is communism. That's the great secret. You get the book Protestant Ethic. Lay it all out. Lay it all out. Um, but so with this new edict for education, then this is what sets up the National Defense Education Act of 1958. Peace, thrive in peace, poetic heart. So the National Defense Act was signed into law on September 2nd, 1958. If you want to take some notes, write that date down. September 2nd, 1958. NDEA was among many scientific initiatives implemented by President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Now, I'm going to tell you what's funny about Eisenhower. So, this National Defense Education Act is implemented under his presidential administrative watch. Now, as he's going out, people always quote him. Eisenhower warned us about the military industrial complex, as if he was trying to protect the American people and warning them. But this right here is a key catalyst in the military industrial complex. This National Defense Education Act of 1958. When I tell you all the things that's in, you need to go look this up. It says NDEA, which is the acronym for National Defense Education Act, was among many science initiatives implemented by President Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1958 to increase the technological sophistication and power of the United States alongside, for instance, DARPA and NASA. Put a paper clip right there. It followed a growing national sense that and I'm getting this from Wikipedia, but I have backed all this is legit because I have found it in other places too. So the early scientists were falling behind scientists in the Soviet Union. The early Soviet success in the space race catalyzed a national sense of unease with Soviet technological advances. especially after the Soviet Union launched the first ever satellite, Sputnik, the previous year. Okay. Now, um, so like I said, this thing was, I want you to think about, you got to think horizontally across the board. You got to think what all is going on in the world at this time. This is when Martin Luther King, the civil rights, he is now being pushed to the forefront in this basic time span with the what was the bus boycott, if there was that in Alabama. I'm trying to think where it was, where that was what catapulted him to the scene, right? So this is all going on basically in this basic era, 56, 57, 58. Here's another sidebar. In this same time frame, there's a professor at Yale University named Aaron Lerner. And Aaron Lerner has had these breakthroughs and has discovered properties of melanin, or what they would call melatonin. All this is going on at this time. Also, at this time, we have somewhere in this era. Hold on. Let me make sure. Where's my notepad? Uh, Also, around this time, I want to say we had a Jupiter Neptune square, just like we got right now. What's up, Dad? Thank you. Yeah, Montgomery bus boycott. Thank you. Thank you. So right now we are living within a Jupiter Neptune square because Neptune and Saturn are in Aries, receiving a square from Jupiter at the moment. So in around this era, basically in 55, we had them squaring each other. And this is a sidebar. 55 during the Jupiter Neptune square, which I'll do a separate video on this. This is when the Branch Davidians started. 55. This is when Jim Jones founds his People's Temple, Jupiter Neptune square. This is when, and then by 58, the cult Synanon was founded. And by 58, Jupiter and Neptune are conjunct in Scorpio. So when you have Jupiter and Neptune aspects, and looking at the Ptolemaic aspects, which would be your conjunction, your um, opposition, your trine, your square, your sextile, and your quincunx. Those are the Ptolemaic aspects. So when those two are in contact with each other, it can be one where it's ideological excess. Ideological excess. So around the time that we're talking about, specifically for the formation of the National Defense Education Act, it is in the basic window of Jupiter Neptune conjunction in Scorpio. In Scorpio, which means this is hidden underworld activity. And it is hidden underworld occult activity because Jupiter and Neptune deal with spiritual inclination, but it doesn't necessarily mean spiritual as in good. It's spiritual as in unseen forces. Stay with me because I'm building to something here. I'm just trying to paint the picture of all this climate, all these things. What happens? Listen, And I'm getting ahead of myself. But listen, when I read you some of the stuff in this NDEA, you're going to see why I'm emphasizing you got to think horizontally. You got to see things wide and far. Because what you will see in this thing is that it was setting the stage for coagulating our thoughts. It's diabolical. Title, so it had 10 titles within this act. Now I'm gonna touch on the ones I think are the most pertinent. Title 2 authorizes the provision of student loans. This is where student loans as we know them today, 1958 is where it began. And this is another thing. This energy right here is this is when my father's graduating high school. My father graduated high school in 1955 during the Jupiter Neptune square, right? And by 58, he's in the Air Force. So I'm just giving this his background. So I just like this. I like to flashback and think if you know somebody who was alive at that time, and just to be thinking like, well, where were they at in their lives and what was going on? Like you got a real example of somebody who was living through this, and so that's just a sidebar. But um, Title 3. Now listen to this one. Title 3 provides additional financial assistance for the purposes of strengthening science, math, and foreign language programs. Now, this would be the birth of STEM. How many people now are clamoring to get their children in STEM programs? Because we've been conditioned that this means that your child is excelling and your child is intelligent. We're guilty of it. And I think the spirit saved us. We had our youngest children go and test at a STEM school, and they weren't prepared for the test, so they didn't meet the criteria. Now, highly intelligent. So I told my wife, I said, I think that is a spirit. It blocked that because as soon as you walk up to the building, the cornerstone has that very noteworthy symbol that we all know about, where one's like this and the other one's like that. I looked at that on the building as soon as we came up, and I already got funny feeling. But so I feel like that was blocked for our good. Um, but So we see how this is laying the foundation. Why am I saying that this is important? Because this is this is a basic edict here to lock the child up in the left brain. That's what's so diabolical about this. This was an effort to shut off the feminine side of the brain and to overemphasize the left side. Because in addition, what they did, they said, yeah, they're going to promote foreign language, but Latin and Greek programs are not funded under this title on the grounds that they are not modern foreign languages and does not support defense needs. You know what's so diabolical about it? You know how why Latin and Greek are so important? Because this allows you to go back and read literature from as far back as the first century. If you can find, this is how astrologers were able to piece together certain facets of traditional astrology, because they were able, they called them the three, was it the three Roberts? It was Robert Hand and two other guys. I can't remember the name of the project. Project Hindsight, I think was the name of it. And they did this in the 90s where they went and recovered all these Greek and Latin texts because they could read this shit. And they went back and pieced together the astrological um, tradition back through Greece and I think they were the bridge with medieval astrology, but it was through their efforts. But it was because they could read Greek and Latin. And when we were in school, you had the kids who took Latin, and we still had, well, you could take Latin and Greek in school, but that was like, we looked at them as like, what you want to take Latin for? What you want to take? And here I am. God, I wish I could read some Latin fluently right now. I'm sitting here trying to teach myself Hebrew, you know, how to teach myself a little bit of Arabic. Man, I wish my mind would have could have appreciated back then how important these languages, because these are languages of love. And if you really know you, if you really, really want to get down with it, that's why they call it Moorish Latin. These were the love languages to help to try to raise up animalistic people by creating amore. That's what Latin is for. It is to incite the soul. This is what the liberal arts are for. The liberal arts allow the soul to speak. And what happens is with this made the liberal arts kind of like folly. And so basically, from that time on, the liberal arts were already going on a decline. Till now, we get to the point now it's almost a joke to have a liberal arts degree. But guess what? Now they are making a comeback because now I'm not going to say the only way, one of the key ways to resist artificial intelligence is to tap into God intelligence. And art is one of the key ways. Art of all forms, art. Writing is an art, speaking is an art, music is an art, singing is an art, visual art, fashion, decorating, things you may think are just mundane. Yes, decorating. These are ancient sciences. Because if you can make your home resonate at a soul level, you can do anything. Your home is your, I mean, it's so like, so let me get back because I've belabored on this too long, but it's just that to me, it's just that big of a deal. Piece that crazy. Title 4. Funding for graduate fellowships in order to increase the number of graduate level professionals and university professors. Now look at this. You got to have, so you got to have graduate level professionals because you need those so-called brighter minds to help drive the agenda. And you need people who have co-opted thought to work in your universities who will then teach the new crop. Uh, Listen to this. Priority was given to students who stated an interest in becoming a professor. However, certain fields such as folklore, listen to this. Folklore is almost on the same line as it's mythology. It is. It's not almost, it is mythology. Now you got to understand at the same time that they're doing this, this is with Joseph Campbell. I want to say Joseph Campbell is still on the scene. Now, Joseph Campbell is who George Lucas was inspired by. So, and and in all your secret societies and groups, they know who Joseph Campbell is. So if there's the same people who are running government, why would you then demote folklore? However, certain fields such as folklore were specifically exempted from these fellowships. It's by design. Title IV was also one of the only two federal programs, along with Title VI of the NDEA, in existence at the time that gave any funding to the humanities. Okay, so they said they gave some funding. Okay. Title V includes provisions for the training. Listen to this. Title V includes the provisions for the training of guidance counselors. This is where guidance counselors come from. The implementation of testing programs to identify gifted students. This laid the groundwork for academically gifted and talented programs. Now, many of us have been through these programs. And what's crazy is they've been putting these videos on TikTok about, did you ever have to take these pink tablets? And I'm like, yeah, they supposed to help you identify cavities. And I remember they used to bring us around mouthwash and, and, you had to, that was everybody though. But they talked about the hearing test. I was like, wait a minute. So that's a whole nother thing though. But either way, guidance counselors, academically gifted and talented. Why do you need a guidance counselors? The guidance counselors would be the snitches, basically. They would go in and point out what children seem to be the brightest. And I'm gonna tell you, I think many of us who've been through them programs that we've been monitored the whole time. you know, um, and so the guidance counselor would be the point person that identify these people, and then they pull you out of class and you go and do all these little cool things, and I mean, my children in it now. Um, but it does make you wonder about a lot of this because you need your brightest minds. And they're working statistics too. They're probably figuring some of them gonna be wayward, and some of them gonna be go some other direction. A certain percentage of them, we will be able to glean them, and they will be part of the machine. Now listen to this. Listen to this. Title VI provides funding for language and area studies programs. Area studies includes such subjects as African American studies and Latin American studies. Now, listen to this. African American studies. Now, this is 1958. They're already laying the foundation to bring African American studies into the university. Now, hold on now. This is before all of the civil rights bill is signed. This is before all of the major marches have occurred, all of the assassinations, all of the we shall overcomes. It was already slated because they created the whole movement. They had already put provisions in here to create African American studies. And I was talking to Dab earlier about how when many of us get into, just um higher brow information, for many of us, if you're deeply melanated, you come through Afrocentric studies. Your Clarks, your Ivan Van Sertima's, your Dr. Ben's, your Chancellor Williams, John G. Jackson, and Runoko Rashidi, all of the people. And this is not to cast any disparaging light on them, because I think to an extent they were being used. They were being used. because it makes no sense for you to be fighting for rights. The 50s, you got to understand when people say make America great again, they're talking about the 50s. White picket fence, you know, you get the GI Bill, you get you a home, you know, the milk guy comes by and drops off little bottles of milk for you, and the newspaper's thrown out by little Johnny on ding ding ding. He reads this little bell as he's going by, throwing it like this is it's the Truman Show. That's what they wax poetic about with Make America Great Again, the 50s. So to be in that climate and it already be put aside for there to be Latin and African American studies, you got to be able to think. You got to think high level, like you got, no, not even high level, common sense. A lot of what we have held near and dear to our hearts has been created. It's been created. And you think about the information that has come out now about, that there's a whole thing called a Pacific slave trade. Why is there such emphasis on Atlantic and none on the Pacific? Because the Pacific is the smoking gun. Because it tells you about them bringing chinos over, and those chinos become Native Americans. It's the smoking gun. Why is it that Francis Scott Key and Daniel Webster and others created a whole society in the 18 teens? So we're talking around 1819, 1820. Why did they create Liberia? Why did they create Monrovia? I think is the name they gave it in. These were places created. So then when we wax poetic about a Marcus Garvey who said go to Liberia, you got to understand who was funding who and who was really directing. And at the time it seems like it's so radical. Yes, we're going back to a homeland. And maybe not knowing that you're already in it. That's why all this stuff is mind-boggling. It's mine, and I'm getting all. It's all coming back. Summer solstice and everything. Everything is everything. Title VII provided funding for research in the more effective use of technology for educational purposes. Left brain. Um, Title VIII provided funding for vocational training in order to better prepare citizens for the workforce. Industrialization. Mm, okay, so Title 9 and 10 don't really have much meat in them, so we're not going to waste time on that. So I've given you this. Um, Peace, everybody coming in. Peace, anointed hands. MJ in the house. Peace, Donna. Okay, so now let's do this. Let's go. And so this is what I want to show you, when this provision is brought in. I don't think I have this chart, but I got the times though. Let me see. Let me see if I can. No. Okay, I got to pull it again. So this is what we're going to do now. What I want you to know is that what astrology shows us is that every moment in time is a significant moment. And our only limitations with astrology is our awareness of moments. if we can find something that can make us aware of a moment, we can then attach astrological significance to it to further explain the significance of that moment and how anything that will happen later on is affecting or affected by that moment in time. And that's what I'm doing now. So what we're gonna do is first thing is I gotta go back and pull the US Sibley chart. Okay. And it is for July 4th, 1776, 5:10 p.m. And that's Philadelphia, PA. And I know there's some discrepancies around which chart is the actual right one and all that. But okay, let's go to I need me a buy wheel. And then for the I'm gonna put up a transit wheel and I need to switch that to Washington. And then I need to move this to September 2nd, 1958. All right. Now I need to share this. All right. So y'all should be able to see that. So this is a buy wheel. And basically, what is the purpose of it is so you can assess two charts at one time. God science in the house. Peace, good brother. Let's see. Pink petal made it in. Peace. Okay. So here's the deal. So in the middle is the US Sibley chart. All right. On the outside would be um transits that were happening on September 2nd, 1958. So on September 2nd, we had Pluto. I want you to remember this. Pluto is at 2 of Virgo. And this Pluto is in the ninth house. So let's look at ninth house. Ninth house is your philosophy. It is higher education. It's your truth. What's the truth that drives you? It's the law. It's foreign affairs. Okay. Ninth house is religion. It's ethics. Now, the US has a spirit. Every corporation or governing body has a spirit. So this Pluto here is moving through the ninth house of the US. And Pluto is a resurrecting type of energy because Pluto takes something in its present form. It causes entropy and decay, transmutes it, and then the final result is something new emerges. So here we have a transformation or transmutation in the U.S. ethic, the U.S. philosophy involving higher education, which is going to ultimately affect laws. It's going to affect foreign affairs. Okay. At this time, Pluto harmonizes with the moon in Taurus. And in this chart, what does the moon rule in the U.S. chart? It rules the eighth house, which is the house of transformation anyway. What else we got going on here? I didn't look at the whole chart. We have Mars. Oh, here's the deal. I'm glad I did not overlook this. Oh, this is the main thing. Thank you. I would have been pissed if I would have loaded this video and come at me like, oh, this is the main. Listen to this. Listen. Let me erase all this other shit because this is what you got to see. Now, look at this right here. Now, look at that's the sixth house cusp in the US chart. Mars in traditional astrology, planets find their joy in certain houses. Mars, which is a malefic, finds its joy in the sixth house, which is considered to be a kind of a malefic house. Because Mars, the god of war, he finds pleasure in being in the sixth house, which is the house of service. So guess what? The sixth house, when Mars is in the sixth, you can simply say it's the soldier. He's a soldier in the sixth. He enjoys that. When they drafted this act on September 2nd, 1958, Mars had just, when it hit 23 degrees, it had just moved into the sixth house of the U.S. Sibley chart. And that's why and this gives me indication too that this may be the chart that you want to use when you're looking at the U.S., the Sibley chart. Because look, this is not by happenstance that this thing is signed in as soon as Mars lands in the sixth house in the US chart. So this was an act of war. And that's the great secret. And see, when Mars is at 23 here, Mars is in a trine with Pluto in the US natal chart and with Neptune. So we have a grand trine that supports the life of this corporation because Mars is in the sixth, which is work, service, but six is also a money house. You get paid for your work. Pluto's in the second house, which is resources, money, trining with Neptune. So here we have the god of war. So we got the soldier, and then we have the natural occultist, Pluto, and the natural ethereal agent, Neptune. This is an occult process right here happening. The people always think that the things are on the surface, what you see. But just like when these rockets go up, when they launched that rocket with what Gail King and all them, what they pretended to launch it. It didn't matter about the fact that everybody knew it was fake. It was a ritual because the rocket is a phallus. And just the idea of people thinking that it was real or thinking that whatever they are even talking about it, that was the energy needed to propel the ritual. That's what astrology works on, apparent motion. The idea that we perceive that we're moving through a belt of signs, it affects us. Those the zodiac belt is light years away from any of these planets, but from our we perceive them as moving through those, so it has an effect on us. No planet actually turns backwards, but we perceive the planet to be retrograde. And when it's retrograded, it's also closer to the Earth. It has an effect on us. So perception is powerful. So this era, everybody was rushing to try to launch stuff up. It was a phallus competition because you wanted to be able to show, because if your phallus could outdo the other, then your consciousness could seed, and then energetically you run the show. So you got Neptune, Pluto, and Mars in a trine when this thing was enacted. Sun was in Virgo, Pluto in Virgo. Now, the other thing to think about too here is this is around the time when children are first going back to school. This is harvest time. Virgo is harvest time. Spica, wheat, wheat stalk. Well, we're going through and gathering all, doing the work to gather up all of the crops so that we can take them to the market. This is not by happenstance that this thing is launched at this time. You know. Now, I'm gonna say this: wars that we see or told are occurring. One of the secrets that people don't realize is that all war is domestic. All war is domestic, meaning we're looking over somewhere else at a conflict somewhere else. But the war is this is part of what this is showing too. The war is right here. And the war has always been on this. This is it. This is it. So let me go. I want you to remember that I said in this chart that Pluto is here at 2 of Virgo. Something else I saw in here I was going to point out. Oh, and it's in a square. And it's in a square to the US Uranus. This is chaos. Okay. Um where do I want to go next? Now I need to come back up to where we at right now. Where we at right now. I'm trying to I'm trying to find my charts. Printed out some other charts. So the big tizzy right now is around Iran, right? Okay. So I gotta go on. So according to sources, news sources and online sources, the US launched this attack on Iran at 12 a.m. June 21st, just a few hours after the summer solstice had officially begun. Okay? So what I want to do is I thought I I thought I had a chart for that. Dang it. June 22nd. I guess I don't. Okay, well I have to cast this. Okay. I think they called it Operate Midnight Hammer. So that's what we'll call this chart. It was June 21st, 12 a.m. And we're going to call it Washington, D.C. All right. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, shit. I put 1776. I was wondering why this didn't look right. Mm, 225. Okay. Now what I need to do is I need to create me and see if this will work. Create me a bi wheel. Midnight Hammer. And the outside wheel, I need to make that. That's fine. Okay, y'all bear with me. I'm getting this chart pulled up. Just gotta mess around with this thing a little bit. Okay. Let me share it. Let me share it. Okay. What you're looking at now in the middle circle is the chart for when they supposedly launched this strike. 12 a.m. June 21st, 2025. So we got Pisces rising. Okay. And there's Mars. There's Mars. Let me see. Let me see. Okay. So look on the outside ring is the chart for September 2nd, 1958. And remember, I talked about Pluto was at 2 of Virgo. And I said every moment in time is significant. We're here at the moment that this attack launches, Mars has recently made its ingress into Virgo. And remember, Mars in Virgo is like when Mars was in the sixth house of the US Sibley chart in 1958, because the sixth house has the energy of Virgo. So that's why Mars finds its joy there, because it is a military soldier. And so when they launch this attack, here there it's a similar energy because Mars is literally in Virgo and conjunct where Pluto was when this thing was signed in, the NDEA, into law in 1958. And this, both of these are in a sextile to the sun and Jupiter. Never let a good aspect go to waste. At this time, they were in a trine to the moon. And here's the point that Jamal is getting to. Like I said in the beginning, here is all this headaches we've been dealing with since September with Mars moving through Cancer, moving into Leo, opposing Pluto, moving back into Cancer in its fall again, and back into Leo again. And then we finally get a little breath of fresh air. And then, boom, there's rumors of war. And here we are feeling uncertain, unsettled, unsure about our reality. You can never let people feel safe. You can never let them feel comfortable. And you can absolutely never let them experience true leisure. This act that was enacted in 58 was an attack on leisure, because the word leisure truly means to learn. That's what leisure is. It's learning. It's not laying around at the pool like what we think. To be a gentleman of leisure or a woman of leisure is to be one who is inclined towards learning. And if you allow people to have too much peace and calm, they might learn something. They might figure out something. They might figure out how to get out of here. So ultimately, my theory is that right here, when we have this, look, the moon on the summer solstice had just moved into its exaltation in Taurus. Venus in Taurus in her domicile. The sun and Jupiter approaching a Cazimi. Jupiter in its exaltation. And this is showing you how astrology can be used for negatively for hidden purposes. The attack is on the psyche. This is a momentous time right here. Momentous. And even though people are still going through, a lot of people going through a whole lot of stuff right now, where it seems like the world's getting turned upside down. But what's going to happen is Jupiter moves faster than Saturn. And Jupiter is going to start separating from this square. Saturn's going to move retrograde back into Pisces one last time. When it does, it's going to be in a trine to Jupiter. This is a Jupiter that's still in Cancer, right? So what the Jupiter and Saturn that have been fighting with each other all throughout last year, still now, they're going to harmonize. Right now is the foundation that each individual has the opportunity to be laying for how they want their tomorrow to play out. But if you bog down the psyche with such dismal, low vibration activity and news and bombardment with other people, guess what? You know what the real magic is? To divert you from your own self. And you arguing with people about bullshit that's so far separated from you. You're using your the power of your tongue to talk about what's going to happen, like fear porn versus we got to always pay attention to the astrological language. Saturn and Aries said you got to focus on yourself, get your house in order. That's been the edict, and it's gonna be the edict, and it is of increasing importance and significance. So you will have diversions to have you looking here. What that uh, passage in the Bible, look low, look there, the kingdom of God is within, something like that. And in Matthew we say, seek ye first the kingdom. And then Luke tells you where the kingdom is in within. We're looking all around, all around. And what'll happen is you'll squander your own magic. The war is on the people. That's why I went back to 1958. And when you have two malefics line up, Mars and Pluto, when you compare the timing of this strike and the um the act that was enacted in 58 and the fact if you apply it to the Sibley chart, it's happening in the ninth house. So the US is looking to recreate itself because in the Sibley chart, this Mars at 2 of Virgo and Pluto at 2 of Virgo that happened in 58 all happened in the ninth house of the US chart. And Mars always, excuse me, has a signature of identity. And I want to say in the Sibley chart that Mars, I think Mars rules the fifth house of children, of children. So this act in 58, children. So there's certain things I can't say on here, but you pay attention. I'll just say this. Pay attention to your children. Pay attention to your children. It is never what is being shown is never the real deal. Never. Never. So, but we're gonna jump. We're gonna jump here a bit just to show some other things too. I know I'm going all around here, but um I want to show you. So there's two charts for the formation of Iran. Show you something. Show you something. Okay. So February 1st, 1979, this is when the was it Ayatollah? Is that the name? His title? When he returns from exile. Okay. So this is one chart for the Islamic Republic of Iran that which would be modern Iran. So this is the chart for when the ousted previous leader returns. I can't remember his name. Um, he returns. So what had happened is the U.S. has been playing a volley game between Iraq and Iran. Now, if you go back, if you're old enough, you remember in the 80s, we had the whole big scandal about the Iran Contra thing with Ollie North. Ollie North was became the fall guy, but this thing was huge, had a lot of major players, a lot of dope got brought in, and arguably this had a key role in, you know, the crack epidemic, amongst other things. So they've been going back and forth. At one time, you're supporting Iran, you're against Iraq, then you're against Iraq, and you know, and just I mean, we all know how all the back and forth went throughout the 90s. All of a sudden, Iraq becomes the boogeyman in the 90s and early 2000s. But 79, this is why while Carter is still in office, I think you have a hostage thing that goes on. A couple of places you had the oil issue, okay? But all that aside, here's what I'm saying. These regime changes, this book gives you a little bit of insight, but they only tell you a little bit though. Many of you probably familiar with this. Secret History of the American Empire. Then they got another one called Economic Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Got that one too. And these kind of go into these. Basically, they're kind of telling you how the U.S. goes in and sponsors these coup d'états whenever they want to flip a government. A regime change. What are they talking about now? A regime change. Now, if they change regimes and they're if they oust, then they're putting in people, even the person that they say is their enemy. And I'm gonna tell you why this chart supports that. Now, I want to see some of y'all out there who study astrology. Uh, okay, that crazy. I know you study hard. If this isn't, look at this chart. And I want you to tell me if this is an electional chart. If I were electing a time to do something, what would be wrong with this chart? It's one key thing. If or anybody else out there, tell me one key thing um that is wrong with this chart. Anybody know? There's a basic one of the basic rules with electional astrology. Look at the moon. Tell me what's wrong with the moon in this chart. Okay, y'all ain't saying nothing. The moon is on an angle in this chart. So if you're electing a time to do something, the moon is probably is about the most important body to look at because the moon deals with timing. The moon is the fastest moving body in the chart. You never want to have the moon on an angle in an electional chart because it means that whatever you initiate is likely to not last. So in this chart, which is some would say that this is not the official chart. But let's say if it were, then this chart would be problematic because the moon is on the angle. That means that this endeavor is not going to last. Well, let's go then and let's see if we go with when they made the official announcement that the new government was instated, and that was on April 1st. The new government was officially instated on April 1st, 1979 at 3 p.m. Let me see if my thing is gonna I guess I gotta no, it's not showing up for y'all. There it is. There it is. So look what we got here. Oh, my bad, that crazy. My bad. That shit worked. So if y'all notice here, we have similar problem. Now this is the official start of the Republic of Iran. And here again, we have the same type of problem because the moon is on an angle. It's in the 10th house. And this in the 10th house is your public identity. And the moon squares Saturn in this chart. So there's doubts here. Doubts around the public identity. So let's just imagine that maybe somebody puts these regimes in place to be the boogeyman. Then that would mean that this thing was already set up to not last. There's no real philosophy. Chiron's here in the ninth house. Although the sun is exalted in the ninth, and the sun finds its joy in the ninth house, but we got Chiron there too. This thing wasn't really meant to last, in my humble estimate. So then, so then, all of the information being put out to the people, is it just propaganda? Who tells you where they're going to strike? We're going to, hey, just want to let you know, I'm going to throw a rock over there at your house in 5 minutes. Nobody, that's not how war works. So what we have to ponder though is what is really, and I haven't had time to really take, to really look at the current transits to the US chart. Cause I think this is where you want to really hang your hat is you want to look at the US chart and compare it to the current transits to try to get an idea. Now, what we do know is that um we do know that Saturn is that Uranus, I'm sorry, Uranus is sitting at that anaretic degree at 29. And at that 29th degree, let's see, it's already in the US sixth house. So the health of the nation has been in difficult position for some time now. But I got to sit and look at this. Oh wow. And oh, okay, let me pull this back up. Here's one thing that really caught my eye. Let me see if I can share this. So this is the US Sibley chart by itself. And look at this. Something had to be done. Where's my pen? Okay, right here. This is the fourth house cusp. Now, you know, the fourth house is the lowest part of the chart. It is the place of your nativity, it's your roots. Well, right there on the fourth house cusp, I want to say we got Saturn. Well, let's do this. Wait a minute. Why am I making this? Let's just do this. Let me make some changes. By will. Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay, it should. Let's see if this new one pops up. Do y'all see the new chart, the by wheel? Hmm. Maybe I don't have it. Okay, it should be showing by now. There we go. So now the middle wheel is the US chart, or the inside wheel is the US chart. And the outer wheel would be what's moving in the sky right now. So now we're looking at the transits. Here's the fourth house cusp for the US. When things land on a cusp, we can sometimes see things pop. Here's Saturn sitting right on the US fourth house cusp in the Sibley chart with Neptune there, which there's a chance of a nation or a body being dissolved. This is things leaving too. Neptune moving through the fourth house. You know, Neptune moving through your fourth house can sometimes be somebody leaving your family, somebody transitioning. This is a tedious time for the US. And here's Pluto. So something had to be done. And then you got this big quincunx right here. Oh boy. Look at this. Okay, so this is a quincunx. There, now this is or a finger of God. When you have a quincunx is a 150-degree angle. When you got two of them, Then you have a yod or a finger of God, which is this green triangle I just drew. And here is Mars, which rules the fourth house in the US chart, is the apex of this finger of God. And here's the thing, the finger of God, I got this from, I have a client she's almost 80, and she shares things with me from one of her um, astrological mentors from back in the 70s. And this lady says, this is how she describes this. She says, the finger of God is where God is literally writing on the chalkboard, and it is where you will be taken down so you can be built back up. If you apply that, and I have a couple of quincunxes in my chart, so I can relate to these are accurate. It's an accurate description. Feeling like you've been taken down to be built back up. I have a quincunx between my first, sixth, and eighth houses, so I know for sure. Now, if Mars rules the U.S. fourth house, and the fourth house represents your roots, the land you come from, your family, your nativity, and it is has unseen forces that it is locked into battle with, but it can't quite see them. It's almost like the chickens coming home to roost. And it's almost as if this is a desperation move, because that we are fighting against a ghost. And when I say we, I ain't talking about me or we. That's just, it is as in how certain entities or minds may be approaching this. Now Mars is going to move on, but this is a slow energy as far as his Pluto, Saturn, and Neptune down here. Slow. But I'm gonna sit with this some more and look this over, so I'm not just sitting here babbling. But that did catch my eye. This is a big deal. And you think about all of the conflict there's been over um with ICE, and the borders, and illegal immigrants, and all this conflict over the land, the land, the land. Hmm. Okay. Okay, I can stop sharing that. So I noticed so much that, so just, I didn't have any notes. This is just uh thrown together here. And I don't even know if I connected the dots that I was trying to connect. But, and I know to sound like, hate to sound like a broken record, but some terms you don't want to use because they're so overly used on the internet. But what is the real power of a mind? Does a human actually possess some type of magic? What is it we really live in? An electromagnetic feedback loop where we're constantly magnetizing what we put out. One of the values of studying astrology and being in a mind of application is that you feel like you have more power and control over your destiny. You know, if I hire you to work for me and I have no clocks, just like when you go in a casino, no clocks, because they want you to lose track of time to where you look up and it's like, damn, it's the next day. I've been in here gambling all this. So if I have you working for me, if I can remove all clocks, you won't really know what I really owe you because you can't really measure. You have no semblance of time. When you study astrology, because time, the word time means daemon or demon, because it divides. Time is the division of the circle or the appearance of division. So if you have the ability to see how the pie is being cut up, then you have a greater chance to choose how you are going to move and operate. That's one of the powers of astrology. Now we see all this stuff going on that's been put out in media, right? And the confusion is at an all-time high because I just showed you that that quincunx is not just in the US chart. That what I showed you just shows you how it's impacting the US chart. But that energy is what we're all in collectively right now. Your sense of self is is under attack because you got Saturn in Aries, which is in its fall. You got Neptune in Aries. Now think about this. Neptune scatters things. Aries is associated with weapons, knives, things that have a exact point on it, an edge. So scatter and point and edge are the antithesis of each other. So Neptune and Aries is almost like having a debilitated placement. But on top of it, the receiver or the dispositor does not see them because Mars is in Virgo right now and a quincunx to those or and forming a yod when you include Pluto in the mix. So we're all dealing with our own personal demons right now. The war is within. Frequency wars. And the main frequency you're dealing with are those within yourself. But all our attention is being diverted out here, out there, out here. When the real war, we're trying to figure out there are blind spots. When 150 degrees means there's things we don't see, but we feel them nagging. And the best thing you can be doing right now is doubling down on, hey, lock in where you can be disciplined. Because even if you can't see all of the little around all the corners, you can at least lock in on getting yourself in order. Because that's what the war is on. The war is for you to not have sovereignty over you. And while Saturn moves to Aries, if you can't master yourself, Saturn, somebody else would be more than happy to do it for you. And when you create enough uncertainty in the world and you bring out the animal in people and the savagery, then it can possibly lead to chaos and anarchy. Then what it does is that the people will demand that somebody steps in and restores order. And when that happens, it'll be what was desired in the first place. And with Neptune moving through Aries, we run the risk of inception. I went to the Apple store the other day to cause my Beats had stopped working, so I took them in so I can go and they can send me a new pair. And I was just looking at some of these little young kids just sitting there with those, I guess those whatever ocular lenses on. And it's just like they were, you know, you lose touch with the fact that you're in a public place, but the way they're looking is just like it's almost like when somebody's nodding out on some dope, you know, and they just and that's the risk with this energy of getting lost in delusion. And I'm seeing, and I mean it's prevalent. And you can't you're trying to tell, you're trying to give hints. And the reason I do some of these mass broadcasts is because sometimes my words come out so I guess they come out so they can be so maybe harsh and authoritative to some that you can't tell people in on a one-on-one. You just have to say it out as a broadcast message. But I'm telling you, I observe. I'm very observant, and I'm watching people. And I've done all this presentation tonight, but really the shit is simple. You gotta lock in. You got if I can get Dap to come on here, I'm gonna bring like I want to start bringing some people on and just let them talk about and I want to tie it into some astrology, but a lot of people talk a lot of stuff on the internet, but I'm telling you, whatever you talking about or studying this and that, you got to be about it. You got to lock in. You ain't got no choice. And you got to master the art of blocking out shit. And we pay attention only to understand the climate we're in. So I know if I need to bring me an umbrella, If I can ride with the convertible top down, do I need a raincoat? Do I need boots? We pay attention for that, but not to get caught up in it. That's the magic. You got to be the magician. You got to be the magician. And magic, a great deal is dependent on consistency. Consistency, methodical consistency. You can beat people on consistency. You can beat a system on consistency. You can beat your demons that plague you with consistency. Trust and believe that. So that's my message um this evening. Um don't squander this beautiful solstice energy that we have had. Use this as the launching pad. I got to see when is the new moon. I'll come back and talk about this upcoming new moon. When is it? We got a new moon coming up. Oh, wow. On the 25th. Oh, shit. Tomorrow. Damn. Okay. So maybe tomorrow I can find some time and we can talk about the new moon. Um, where's this new moon falling? At what degree? The new moon is at four of yo. You see what I'm saying? This new moon is at four of Cancer with Jupiter in the heart of the sun. Well, they'll be separated, but still, they're in a conjunction. Jupiter's in a conjunction with the sun and the moon. This is what I'm talking about. You cannot squander this moment by being distracted by somebody else's drama, somebody else's game, and don't forfeit your future by being resistant to self mastery right now. Divine willing, I'll come back tomorrow. We'll talk about this new moon. Powerful new moon. We will. We will, Audrey. That crazy said it's hitting my sun moon. Oh yeah. Yeah, we're many of us are at a turning point, you know. Thank you, That Crazy too. Thank you. That's Dap digital musical art. Um, he said it works. He's referring to consistency. It works. Thank you, MJ. So on that note, we're gonna wrap it up. As always, you can find me 720astrology.com if you want to invest in the edification of your soul and spiritual journey. You can find me there for a host of readings. What else? It, go and go to Google and read my reviews. Go to Google and read my reviews. Go on Thumbtack and read my reviews. You know, I do. I try not to, jack my chain or nothing too much, but it's the real deal. Go and check it out. And if you need to holler at me, holler at me. As always, stay down till you get up. When you get up, stay down and know the stars to know yourself.